Welcome to the Standpoint. Yeah, this is a special edition. In just some few days, we'll be celebrating International Women's Day. And every time the theme has got something to do with abuse. Yes, I know. But today we are here to celebrate an amazing woman, one that we can call our own. I've told you several times that I've found my purpose just because I love to see women who succeed despite the odds, who break through the so-called glass ceiling, who strive on despite the challenges. And I hate to see women who are being abused and women who don't know their self-worth and therefore allow society to beat them down. That's why we decided to start the Standpoint, to have this platform where we can voice out our views and speak out, shout as loud as anybody can hear. We need to change the status quo, and today my guest has just done that. It's not about politics only, but if you want to make it out there, to get yourself into a position of authority, I know it's tough. Oh yes, I'm sure you know my story, but guess what? Despite all that, I'm here. My name is Gifty Auntie. Welcome to the Standpoint. Let me say thank you to GTP New Style for my cloth makeup by Paba Cosmetics and applied by Aligina Makeover. Thank you to OHG for my hair, and Matilda Hood Couture takes care of my BD needs, including my ahinema today. We take a short break. When we come back, we get to meet an amazing woman. Welcome back to the Standpoint. Today, my guest is one that we can call our own. She is a woman who's been in Parliament for 28 years. She's been in the British Parliament for 28 years. She is the first woman of an African Caribbean background to make it into British Parliament. Yes, you heard me right. The first woman, and she's been able to stay in there 28 years. She started politics a bit earlier, not for Parliament, but we'll get into details when we get to meet her. Before I introduce her personally, let me say thank you to our sponsors: Anointed Electrical Engineering Services, the generator experts, Nescafe Blood Tonic and Anti-Mary Gripe Water, produced by Ernest Chemist. Now, my guest tonight is the one and only Diane Abbott. Welcome to the Standpoint.
It's a pleasure to be here.
How have you been since you came to Ghana?
I've had a very busy time, but I've met some really interesting people. I was privileged to meet your Chief Justice.
Wow.
And a whole group of women judges, and that really made me reflect on how dynamic Ghanaian women are.
Right. How has it been for you in politics?
Well, my family come from Jamaica in the Caribbean.
Okay.
And my grandparents on both sides were agriculturalists. They were illiterate, they tilled their fields and so forth. But they're very ambitious for their children.
Right.
Both my mother and my father left school at 14. But then in their 20s, they came to the UK to make a better life. And I was fortunate to go to secondary school and university and then go into the media.
Oh, I didn't know that bit about you. So you went into the media. You did a bit of journalism?
Yes, I've always done a bit of journalism. I went to Cambridge and I studied history. When I graduated, I was a career civil servant, a sort of graduate civil servant.
Right.
Then I went to work for a civil society organisation, which did a lot on human rights.
Right.
But then I went into the media. I worked in television and I worked in public relations. And I still, although I'm a member of parliament, do media work today because for many years, over 10 years, I've been the co-host for a political discussion program on the BBC. So I've never quite let go of my media profession.
You never let go. That's one thing about media. It's like it becomes part of your blood. It's in the you live it every time. So do you come from a big family? How many siblings? Do you have siblings?
Do you know, I only have one brother.
Oh.
And I only have one son. But both my parents came from very big families. So I have a very big extended family.
Okay. Now, when did politics come in for you?
Well, you know, when I was a little girl, maybe 8 or 9, every morning my mother would plait my hair for school. She would plait it fresh every morning and put ribbons in it. And she would be plaiting it. I would be listening to the news on the BBC. And I would listen to the news and I would say to myself, when I was 8, 9, I would say to myself, you know, when I'm Prime Minister, I'll do this. You know, when I'm running the UN, I will do that. So politics has been a passion of mine from when I was a small girl.
How was it like getting in there? Because even now it's difficult. Now, getting into politics in the 70s and 80s, in fact, in the 80s, must have been something else.
It was very tough, but I started out working in the community. I worked with young girls, running clubs for them. Then I got involved in political activism. I went on marches and demonstrations against police abuse of power. I was very radical. And then I became a local councillor. And I was one of the first black women to do this. And it was tough because people were surprised that you were a black woman and you were doing these things. And even sometimes your men were not as supportive as they might be. And then finally, I was elected in 1987.
Finally, you were elected into Parliament in 1987.
That's right.
So it just didn't start up there. And I'm stressing that because my young student leaders are here. You started from the grassroots.
I think it's so important to start from the grassroots. I started out working in my community, helping younger women, running clubs and organizations for them. And then I got involved in campaigning.
Right.
I think that for a politician, it's really important to start at the grassroots.
Right.
Because that is what will give you the staying power.
Why? That is what will give you the staying power.
Give you the staying power. Because if you're just in politics to make money, if you're just in politics for yourself, that can't work, I don't believe. I believe you have to have the interests of the people at heart, and that means starting out at the grassroots. All the most successful politicians that we see internationally have started at the grassroots. Look at Obama. Obama started as a community organizer in Chicago.
You know, I'm so glad that I'm one of the few people to interview before you leave for UK. You've had the opportunity of meeting a lot of Ghanaian women and many groups. You know, you met the women in activism, those sponsored by AWDF when we met at AWDF. You've met the judges, you've been to other organizations, media. What do you make of women?
Oh, well, I've always known that Ghanaian women are extremely dynamic. I have many friends in the UK who are from Ghana. I think Ghanaian women are very dynamic. I think that in terms of politics, they're often involved at a grassroots level organising. But I'd like to see, next time I come, more younger women going forward in politics, because I think they have a lot to contribute.
Yeah, that's where the problem seems to be. That's what my problem is. We seem to be doing okay at the grassroots by moving the notch up higher is always the problem. We are okay doing the unit committee level, the district assembly, but it's always tough moving into parliament. I don't know if you've had the opportunity of meeting the women in parliament yet.
I've met some Ghanaian women parliamentarians. I think the key is that women support other women. Because quite often, women in politics find they don't necessarily get the support from other women out there. And what I would say is, even if you yourself don't want to go forward in politics, you should always try and support other women who are trying to go forward.
Okay. Let me take a break here. When we come back, we'll get into her life a bit more, aside politics, because before we come back to politics. This is The Standpoint. My name is Ohineyere Gifty Auntie. I told you just next week we are going to have International Women's Day. The theme for this year, the global theme, is Pledge for Parity. Of course, normally we also have the local themes as well. And I'm just fortunate and privileged to have Diane Abbott, none other than Diane Abbott here, who's been through it, seen it, and still knows the challenges ahead. The Standpoint is supported by Awake Mineral Water. That's purified mineral water produced by Casa Preco Company Limited. When you buy a bottle of Awake Purified Water, you are contributing 1 Ghana Peswa towards the National Cardiothoracic Center. So the young, privileged, and the privileged ones who can't afford surgeries, we have challenges when it comes to holding heart, especially with children born in rural communities. They can be supported to go through a successful surgery. Thank you to Daily Fruit Juices, Gogot Yogurt, Mac Catering Services, Matamates, they give us the port, and Yep Cleaning Services. We take a short break. When we come back, we'll get talking. But don't forget, this program is also aired on ABN TV, on Sky Channel 235, which is across Western Europe, part of Canada and Asia, and some parts of North Africa as well. Our website, www.thestandpoint.com.gh. It's powered by Dream Oval. We'll be back.
Class, this is Nescofa. Today our topic is anemia. Anemia is a medical condition where there is lack of iron in the blood. Symptoms may include headaches, weakness, loss of appetite, and tiredness.
Nescofa Blood Tonic is fortified with iron, prevents and treats anemia, and ensures good health. Another quality product from NS Chemists.
Welcome back to The Standpoint. Diane, you mentioned that you have a son. How do you manage family life?
Well, family life is very challenging. I think it's difficult for women both to have a high-profile career and a husband and manage family life. I've had a lot of support from family and women friends, but it's always a struggle. And sometimes you think to yourself, am I doing the best by my family? And sometimes you think to yourself, am I doing the best by my career? But I'm very glad to have had a son. And I think that in some ways, having a family has made me more focused as a politician, because you're doing it for a new generation.
You're doing it for a new generation. Now, your son schooled in Ghana.
My son went to SOS International College in Tema.
Right.
He was there for 2 years, did his international baccalaureate there.
Okay.
And it was a wonderful school, and he had a great time. And then he came back to UK and studied law at Cambridge.
Okay, but you were married to a Ghanaian?
I was married to a Ghanaian. And he was an architect.
Okay.
And we had a good marriage, but in the end, it wasn't to be. But I had a lovely son as a result.
Right. So no regrets in there?
No regrets. I think it's important to go through. It's so important in life not to regret the things. I'd much rather have done things than regret the things I hadn't done.
Okay. So what do you think has sustained you in politics for these past 28 years?
First of all, I think it's really important that for younger women coming up, it's easier than it was for me. Secondly, I want to help my community, and in particular be a voice for people that don't otherwise have a voice. So I have two big projects in the UK. One is a network for black women who want to be entrepreneurs. Okay. We call it the Black Women Mean Business Network. Okay. And for nearly
Black Women Mean Business.
Yeah, because we mean
business. Yes, we do mean business.
So I've run it for over 20 years, and it's a network. We bring black female entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs together. I introduce them to bankers and finance and training, but also some social events as well so they can network. My other big project that I've done for over 20 years is around education, and it's around trying to raise the achievements of black children, particularly black boys.
Particularly black boys. So the focus is not just about women, black communities.
My education work is about both boys and girls, and particularly boys, because sometimes boys go off the rails in a way that girls don't. Right. Girls may have a difficult time in adolescence, but they can kind of focus. But sometimes our boys are lost to us.
Okay. Now, you started 28 years ago. It was tough. I keep stressing on it because, unfortunately, I haven't seen any woman made it in Parliament in Ghana for that long, anywhere close to that long. Mostly, at most, 12 years, and somehow they're kicked out because of one thing or the other. We still have the challenges of people saying women in politics, they become arrogant. There's that stigma of the sleeping around. There's that thing where they need a spousal, the husband's permission. The name calling, the insults, the how dirty politics is. So some women, very good women, are even afraid to go in there. And even when you're not actively involved in politics and you're given a ministerial position, you're immediately tagged with a political, affiliation. And some women find it really difficult to accept these challenges to go on. Why do you think it's important for women to stay focused and be determined to get actively involved in politics?
It's rough in the UK too. I mean, the name calling and the personal attacks, that happens in the UK too. And I think with the rise of new media, where people can, criticize you and attack you anonymously, in some ways that's even worse. But I do think it's important for women to go forward, be involved in their community, and then take that next step and be involved in politics. Because a country like Ghana, its people are its greatest asset. Not its gold, not its oil, not its cocoa, it's people. And the countries that have moved forward internationally are the ones where the people, the education of the people, the leadership of the people is what makes the difference and which makes them successful. And if women are not represented in politics, it's like Ghana is losing all that talent.
Right. Now, the theme for this year's International Women's Day is the global theme is Pledge for Parity. Is it a workable? You think it's a great theme?
I think it's a great theme. I think women and girls should have parity. They should have parity of esteem. They should have parity of respect. They should have parity of representation in society, whether it's judges, but also parity in politics. There should be a parity of women and men in politics because women have so much to give.
All right, let me take another short break. When I come back, I give the opportunity to the student leaders in the audience. Nooks, reps, we have, student SRC members here. I'm sure they have questions. Do you have questions? You do? Or I should continue? You do have questions? All right, let me say thank you to GTP for my cloth. They are celebrating 50 years of styling the nation, 50 years still timeless. Thank you to Ophelia for my dress. Legina Makeover applies the makeup for us, and Paba Cosmetics provides us with makeup. Now, in 2 weeks, it will be Easter. 26th of March, it's a Saturday. I invite you to the Little Republic of Edumasa. That is where my husband is the chief. It's his 5th anniversary as a chief, and it's going to be the day that I will also be introduced officially to the people of Edumasa as his wife, as Oheneyere. That is the day that I'll also officially open the Award Danswa Reading Project Library. I know I've been telling you, and most of you have contributed books, and I'm so grateful for the books that you've donated. But come and witness, come and see what we are doing with the reading project and the library, and maybe you get the opportunity to read to the young ones. Can you imagine? These kids, thousands of them, some of them have never seen a storybook before. They don't know what a library is. But thanks to you out there, now we have about 5,000 books. I needed 10,000, but you gave me 5,000. Thank you all the same. Keep the books coming in, and let's give the next generation a wonderful time. We'll be back.
Hush, my little baby.
For babies' tummy pains, minor digestive upsets, or teething, caring mothers everywhere use Auntie Mary's Baby Gripe mixture. It's quick, effective, and sure to leave babies smiling again in no time. Auntie Mary's Baby Gripe mixture from Ernest Chemist, because everyone needs a chemist.
Welcome back to the Standpoint. Welcome back. Yes, I mean, quite revealing, quite challenging. Very insightful. She may not be a Ghanaian, but she is a woman. Challenges almost the same. So we have no excuse. And, you know, you and I have a pact. My girl, you need foundation. These days, you're not doing well. All I need is 1 Ghana cedi or more. Please drop 1 Ghana cedi or more in the box. We have boxes at every single ADB bank across the country, and GCB and NIB banks in Tema and Accra. Please look out and drop 1 Ghana cedi or more for us to help the young abused girl who wants to go to school. Now we have about 40 girls in school. Some of them have finished. Some of them are at the tertiary level, but we need to help a bit more girls. So all I ask is 1 Ghana cedi or more. Once again, let me acknowledge my sponsors. That's Anointed Electrical Engineering Services. They are the generator expert, and Auntie Mary Gripe Water, and Nescafe Black Tonic, produced by Ernest Chemist. Let me come to my young student leaders for them to ask questions.
So my name is Stephanie Akoma Ayom, and the Vice President of Jubilee and International Student Hostel. I want to know the myth about a woman not being able to succeed in 2 aspects of her life, or 2. I mean, her family life with her husband and maybe her political career like you have. I want to know, what were the difficulties? Because people say this a lot, and I wonder if it's true, but from most examples I see, it's like that. Please clarify for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, before you answer, let me add a bit of history to that. A lot of the young ladies, when they are going for student leadership positions, are told that if you are outspoken and you go all out there, you won't get a husband. And marriage, as you know, is a big thing here. Every woman must marry. It's like a must. And so you need to tone down a bit. You don't have to be higher than a man, otherwise you won't get a husband. So that's the background to that question.
I think that's a very old-fashioned view. It might have been true years ago, but as I said earlier, I was in the courts, the new court complex. I met your Chief Justice, who is married. I met a number of women judges, top judges, who are married. And I think that as women have become more educated, men have become more educated. I think men should be proud to have a wife who, has a good career and can earn and contribute and is an example to their children. I think now, as the world has moved on, it is possible to have your career, have your husband, have your children. And I've seen examples of that here in Ghana.
Right. And if I may add a little, you know, Nana Oyeleta, Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection, she is married to a lawyer. You know, yes, you know Angela Dramnabwaji of the ACT Foundation. She is also married. I'm sure you know Gifty Auntie. Okay, before we get to Gifty Auntie, you've heard about Abantu. Yes. Abantu for Development. So that's Dr. Rose Kuting. She's married to Professor. Yes, she's married to Professor Kwame Kakari. I'm sure you've heard them. And there's quite a number of them out there who are, if marriage is that important to you, that man who deserves you will come and marry.
Okay, so my name is Felicia, and I'm the secretary of the SRC of University of Ghana. Now, my question is, you're the first female black member of parliament to be in parliament for 28 years. What were your challenges, and what are your strengths so far that makes you who you are as you are now?
Well, my challenges were the fact that people didn't expect, there'd never been a black woman MP before. So people didn't expect it. And when I was first elected to Parliament, I had long braids down to my shoulders. And I was also very radical. And that was seen as quite unusual. And so people didn't expect this young woman with the braids and so on and the radical ideas to become an MP. And that was a challenge. Also, some of our men are not necessarily as supportive. However, I think my strength was that I had a lot of support from women friends. I had a lot of support from family, and also my family come from rural Jamaica, the Jamaican countryside. They grow bananas and sugar and so forth, and they come from like a hilly district in Jamaica, not a tourism district, a hilly district, and people in that district really believe that you can leave their district and conquer the world. And I remember going back to my parents' village when I'd been elected for the first time as a member of Parliament. And I was in church, and after they'd had the service, the church elder, who was a lady, Sister Kate, she announced I was in the congregation, and she was very proud. But she didn't announce me by name. She said, "Little Lucy's daughter," because in those communities what matters is whose child you are, not that you've got a big job and so on. Yeah. And then I come out of the church, I'm standing on the steps, and this lady rushes up to me, and I won't do the Jamaican accent, but she rushes up to me and she says, "You know, when I heard that a black woman was an MP in England, I was so proud." And we're here in this village, it's called Smithville, in the middle of the Jamaican countryside. And she says, "When I hear a black woman becomes an MP, I was so proud. But when I heard that a black woman became an MP in England, I knew it was someone from Smithville." I came from rural stock. As I say, my grandparents were agriculturists. They didn't necessarily able to read and write, but they believed in themselves, and they instilled in my parents, and through my parents to me, a sense of pride, a sense that what you turn your hand to, you can achieve. And I think that strength of character that I got from my rural ancestors has helped me a good deal. There's a poem by a black American woman poet called Maya Angelou, and it's called I Rise.
I Rise, yeah.
And the final verses of it is, "Bearing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the hope and the dream of the slave. My asset were the gifts that my ancestors gave."
Okay.
Right. My name is Nancy, and I'm a student journalist at Radio University on campus, University of Ghana. My question is, you made mention of the fact that you had a lot of young women supporting you, but over here in Ghana, it's quite difficult getting them to support you as a lady. Some might think that they'll tag you with a name. that they might think you become this boastful and this pompous when you are being given the chance
arrogant,
to.
you are too known.
You're proud.
Yeah.
Yes, all that. But as a young lady, I would like to help my community in a very remarkable way. But here's the case: I do not have the support. What then would you advise me to do to stay on top at all times?
Well, I have to say to you that I didn't necessarily get support from everybody, but I did get support from some family and friends. And all I would say to you is to try and work with other women on things they are concerned about, to draw them in that way. And where people are supportive, it could be an auntie, it could be a sister, it could be a schoolmate, stay close to them, and that will help you go through. And if you show that you are trying to help other people, and it's not just about advancing yourself personally, I think you will get more support than you think.
Okay. Before we move on to the next one, let me tag in this question, because here by law, parliamentarians are supposed to be lawmakers. They are to legislate, go in, formulate policies and argue. But when they are contesting for parliament, they make promises. Like, we'll construct the roads, we'll build schools, we'll do this, we'll do that. And these are some of the things that the women cannot promise. So that affects the women who campaign to go to parliament, because they are made to understand that if your party does not win, it's quite difficult for you to do, because everything is very partisan. District assemblies, MPs get the common fund is channeled through the district assembly, and they are all political heads. So if you do not belong to that party in parliament, it's quite difficult for you to, implement any of the projects that you promised to do. So it's become a huge debate in Ghana that during political campaigns, what should the MPs, somebody aspiring to go to parliament, promise and not to promise?
Well, I just think you should be careful what you promise. That's what I think. I think it's probably a mistake to promise lots of things if you don't know how you are going to get them done. I was fortunate under a Labour government, under Tony Blair, who was the Prime Minister then. The Labour Party spent a lot of money on hospitals and schools and transport. But I didn't go into an election promising a whole lot of things. What I did promise was to stand up for my constituents and fight for my constituents. And you cannot necessarily promise a whole list of things, but you can promise always to be on your constituents' side.
One of the things I learned about you is that you have a strong lobbying skill. You really know how to lobby for your constituency, and that's something we lack here. What is strategy?
Well, I think it's important to keep close to the grassroots so you understand what they want. And I think it's important to be persistent. The thing I learned in politics over the years is that sometimes you have to keep asking for the same thing or saying the same thing month after month, year after year, until finally it happens. If I would say 2 qualities a successful politician needs, or maybe 3. One is being close to the people, the second is to be brave, particularly if you're a woman, and the third is to be persistent.
To be persistent. Okay.
My name is Angela Fancy, and I'm the former Vice President for International Hostels and Jubilee Hall. My question is this. As the first black woman in the British government, British Parliament to be specific, have you ever encountered any form of racism in your line of work? Have you ever? That's my question. I want to know.
Racism.
You're asking...
If you're...
You're asking whether, as a black woman in politics, I've ever experienced racism. The answer is yes, of course, in a way. You will find very few black professionals in the UK who can tell you they've never experienced racism. In fact, I'm sure you can't find one if they're really honest.
How did you manage through? How did you manage to pull through all those form of racism? Because some women would have given up.
You can't let racism incapacitate you. Because if you let racism stop you doing the things you want to do, or saying the things you want to do, then the racists have won. You can't let that happen. If if my parents and my grandparents had just collapsed in the face of racism and discrimination, I couldn't be sitting here in front of you. Racism is not my problem. I understand, it's not their problem, it's not my problem. I understand it when I see it, but I've never let it stop me doing what I want to do. When I first started talking about going into Parliament, there were people that kind of said, well, what makes you think, well, you know what I mean? But I never let that, I try not to let that bother me. And I've always told my son as well, you need to set out and do what you want to do. You can't let other people make you hold back.
Okay, I'm Olive Fasapon, Treasurer for Volta Hall, University of Ghana. I know that some women are tagged as soft when making some decisions. So I want to know if you feel intimidated sometimes and how do you deal with it?
Does she look soft to you? This woman is not soft.
Sometimes people feel that because you are in a prominent position in politics or so forth, that you do not know fear. I know fear. Sometimes people say to me, how do you speak in public? You know, why are you not nervous? I'm always nervous before I have to speak in public. The point is not that I don't feel fear or that I'm not nervous. It's that you have to overcome the fear. We all feel fear, we're all nervous sometimes, but we have to overcome it. And sometimes when I've had to do like a big speech in front of thousands of people, which I sometimes have to do, I think of something, and what I think of is this. I was born and brought up in the UK. When I was in my 20s, my mother took me home to Jamaica for the first time. And we went to stay with my grandmother, who lives in a village, as I say, in rural Jamaica. And we were there, I think, a week and so forth. And there was no electricity, she had oil lamps, she had an outside, you know, she didn't have proper sanitation and so forth. But she was a very, very dignified lady. And I always remember we got up to go back into town from Smithville. And we had these big cases. And my grandmother, who would have been 60 then, she put both cases on her head. And she walked to the bus stop, and she looked so graceful and so dignified. Whenever I am nervous doing some big meeting or big speech, I always think about my grandmother and all her grace and dignity, and I hope that I can convey some of that when I stand up to speak.
Afi Maria from Gempa. Okay, my question is, you know, as young as we are here today, we have the passion to help people. But sometimes when we get the opportunity to go to the top, we forget all about those who help us to get to the top. So please, your advice. Yes, thank you.
My advice is how I started, I think. It's so important to stay close to your community. And it's so important, whether or not you go into politics, to find some project in your community that you can help with. Because the worst thing is when people get the qualifications and they get their degree and they get their big job and they forget all about the people they came from. So I would always say, whether or not you go into politics, try and think about the people that you can help, even in a small way. Maybe donating books, maybe going into a school and helping out, because it's so important to remember where we came from. It's so important to remember where we came from, because we all stand on the shoulders of our ancestors.
We all stand on the shoulders of our ancestors. Clap for yourselves. Very good questions, asked there. But in conclusion, as you leave Ghana, and we're about to, next week Tuesday, which will be 8th March, we'll be celebrating International Women's Day with the theme, Pledge for Parity. What would you want us to think of, especially Ghanaian women and men, to think about, even as we celebrate that day, in terms of parity?
Well, I think what you should think is all the amazing women who already achieved parity or better, like your Chief Justice, but also the importance of making sure that a whole generation of young women can not just achieve parity, but take parity with young men completely for granted and just move forward.
And just move forward. When do we see you next?
Oh,
in Ghana?
Very soon, I hope.
Thank you very much. And I must acknowledge that Diane Abbott came with her PA, who is Belle. Belle, I'm sure Belle joined you as a student leader.
I first met her as a student activist, a very fiery student activist.
And she's been with you for...
And she's been with me for a few years now. And who knows? She keeps denying it, but you may see Belle as a British Member of Parliament, yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Diane. I'll take a short break. When I come back, I'll give you a bit of me. Diane has given us a lot that we can chew on. But for me, there's one phrase that keeps ringing. Don't let racism incapacitate you. Yes, I'm pronouncing it the way we say it. Incapacitate you. We may not be suffering racism here, but you know that as Ghanaian women, as African women, wherever you are, because this program is global, we have so many things that we are allowing to incapacitate us. Is it abuse? Is it stigma? Is it poverty? Is it our background? Whatever it is, whatever the challenge, you should not let it incapacitate you. You need to keep going. Yes, some have called me a rebel. I love it. Sometimes you need to break that cycle. You may not be fortunate to have ancestors where you can look up to, but can you become an ancestor so that somebody can remember you one day and look up to you and say, because of you, because she did this, because she was able to break through this challenge, I can also do it. We don't know Diane's parents and ancestors, but today we have heard their stories. We remember that woman, that old lady, 60-something year, who carried suitcases on top of her head and walked gracefully. We remember those farmers, agriculturists, who never went to school but believed in themselves. We remember those two parents, young in their late 20s, who went to America and left school at 14 years but decided they would give the best to their children. And now one of their children, a daughter, is the first black woman to make to British Parliament. What are you and I going to do differently to give a better future to the young women coming up? Do not, whatever the challenge, yes, I know it's tough. Oh, I know it, and you know I've been through it. Whatever it is, let them call you all the names, but do not let it incapacitate you, especially my young ladies. Stay focused. Believe in yourself. Nobody was born confident. Nobody was born confident, but you can learn confidence. Be bold, be determined, and become an achiever. Thanks for watching. See you same time next week. Bye for now.